Hi, I'm Scott Omelanek, or Scott O as everyone calls me, no one being able to pronounce Omelanek, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Inc. I'm excited today to have you here, and I'm excited for our guest. I'm thrilled to welcome NFL Hall of Famer, Super Bowl champion, former New York Giant, television personality, television host, two-time Emmy winner, author, clothes horse, designer, entrepreneur, co-founder of a talent management agency, and not even finally, but crucially to us, host of the 2020 Inc. 5000 Gala and Awards. He's also someone I've wanted to interview for about 20 years. Michael Strahan. Michael, welcome to the Inc. Vision Conference.
Thank you very much for having me. And if I had 20 years, I had no idea that someone's been chasing me down for 20 years, but I'm glad that I'm able to finally catch up with you and do this with Inc.
You were a lot faster than me as a player and just as a person in general, so it took me a long time. But you're here, and I'm thrilled. The Vision Conference is meant to help the entrepreneurial community share ideas and really see what's next. And I thought it would be great to have you with us, since from my perspective, my point of view anyway, it seems near anything is next for you. Everything is possible. Where did that drive come from?
I think it's just the way I was brought up and where I was brought up. Son of a military man. Parents, we lived all over the world. My parents were in Korea. My dad was a paratrooper at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And when I was 9 years old, we moved to Germany. And for me, I didn't grow up, my career started in football as far as like my professional life, but I didn't grow up wanting to be a football player. I looked at life as like everything is open. You could be anything that you wanted. So when I became a professional athlete, and after I retired, everything was still on the table to me. I didn't see myself as just one thing. I saw myself as just a person who can do anything he wanted to do. And I've tried to capitalize on that mentality my entire life.
The background you grew up in gave you this sense of possibility, but you had to have a certain amount of discipline too, right? To achieve things, right? Because you can think anything's possible, but the discipline is what makes it actually happen. Where did that come from?
That's my father. Discipline comes from my parents, especially my father. He went to the Army out of high school, didn't have an education as far as college or anything like that, was in the military for 13 years, did not get as far as he wanted because he realized he needed to be an officer in order to really advance in his career. So he got out of the military with 5 kids and me on the way and enrolled at Prairie View University and entered the ROTC program and got lucky because it was like a little loophole that allowed him to get into the program at 36 years old or so. And amazing thing is, he ended up graduating. He graduated magna cum laude of his class at 36. So it taught me that no matter what you want, if you really want it bad enough, you can do it no matter the circumstances. There are no excuses. And he was disciplined to do that with so much responsibility with a family, but knowing that I have to be disciplined to achieve what I want to achieve to get where I want to go. And after he graduated magna cum laude of his class, he went back into the military as an officer, which was when I'm on the football field or when I was at training camp or anytime I was tired and I'm doing what I'm doing now, I think, okay, you have it easy compared to what your father went through. And that really gives me discipline. It really gives me guidance, really gives me motivation. And just working out with my dad when I was a kid. When I was 13 years old, I wasn't very disciplined. They called me Bob, which meant booty on back, big old butt, however you want to call it, whatever you want to say. And I wasn't very disciplined because I was a kid that ate everything and I laid around. I didn't do much. But after being called Bob and realizing why I was being called Bob, I started to work out. I bought the Jane Fonda workout tapes and the Herschel Walker workout book. So I would do Jane Fonda tapes and then I would do push-ups and sit-ups to the Herschel Walker workout book, and I would do this as I'm watching TV and the commercial breaks would come on. So every commercial break, Falcon Crest or Dynasty or whatever it may be, different strokes, I'm doing push-ups and sit-ups and I'm doing Jane Fonda leg lifts. And just the discipline of doing that without being asked to do it because it's just something I wanted to do, that kind of stuck with me. And my father started working out with me every day, literally every day. We would work out together until I was a senior in high school. He says to me one day, you're good enough to get a football scholarship. I'm going to send you to Houston. You're going to stay with your uncle and you're going to get a football scholarship.
So you really hadn't played football before then?
I hadn't played I was 7 and 8 years old. Here I am, a senior in high school. I watched it. We would wake up and we would watch it on TV like every other kid. But there, Monday Night Football was Tuesday morning football. But we would wake up and watch it just like everybody else. I would tape things, but I didn't play. I didn't play soccer. I didn't do any sports. I was just a guy who was lifting weights with his dad because he didn't want to be called Booty on Back Bob. So the discipline of working out with my dad, not even when I wanted to, there were days he could just tell I did not want to be there, the teenager, and he would say, don't worry, son, one day it'll pay off. And I don't think he knew that it had the way it would pay off. I just think he was trying to encourage me as his son. But when he sent me to Houston, I lived with my uncle and his family for 5 months, played football, had no idea what I was doing, none whatsoever, and got one scholarship to Texas Southern University at HBCU, same conference, the SWAC, as my dad's old school, Prairie View University. And I went back to Germany and graduated high school. I literally signed the scholarship in December. And right after, in the Christmas break, I went back to Germany, graduated high school there, and came back to the States for football. But the things that I grew up with, the discipline that it took to work out with my dad every day and do those things, are really what helped me in college, helped me in the pros. I was willing to go further and knew I could go further than a lot of guys were willing to push themselves, because I think that they hadn't pushed themselves when they were younger like I had. And I had such an appreciation for being where I was in my life.
So your dad just passed away recently. He must have been terribly proud of you and what you accomplished, from Jane Fonda tapes and working out in the living room to what you achieved.
Yeah. When my father passed away about a month ago, and he was extremely proud. And when I look back on my life and my career, I don't think I've ever done anything for myself in a sense. When I go to my parents' house and I see trophies from college, like All-American trophies and all these things, it makes me realize that I was doing it to make them proud and to make him proud. And I went from a kid who didn't know anything about football to having to figure it out. And that was another thing with my dad. If there's a problem or issue, I don't want to hear about the struggle. I just want to see the result. And for him to say get a football scholarship, there was no struggle. It was just a result. There was no struggle when it came to working hard. It was just a result of what needed to get done and accomplishing whatever the goal or the job was. So my father, when I was thinking about retiring, and I'd written a book called Under the Helmet with my best friend Jay Glazer. And my dad read the book, and in the book I talk about a point of where how beat up you get sometimes. And I was never a guy who liked to take any shots or any pills or anything. But by year 14, 15, there was no way I could get out there on a Sunday and not have an anti-inflammatory or something like that just to help me get through the week, to make it through practice, to make it through the game. And I talked about some of the multiple injuries that I've had. I've only had 3 surgeries, only one really, or 2 considered major, one to reattach my thumb ligaments and the other one to reattach my pectoral muscle. But those were all later in my career. Another, I had a wrist scope, which was nothing, but I banged up everything. And in the book, we talked about that. We talked about knowing the difference between pain and injury, which you have to know as a football player. We talked about, having to take these Innocent and Naproxen, anti-inflammatories just to practice or to get out of bed and move. And when it came time to retire, I talked to my dad, and I'll never forget, he said, it's good enough. It's time. And for him to say that let me know that I could retire in peace, because the person that I wanted to respect me the most and to earn their respect the most had shown me that I had done that. So it always, that I'll never forget that moment.
That's really special. and wonderful and a gift. And yet, in some ways, it wasn't enough, right? Because let me tick these off. You actually, I've written it down on a card. But host of Good Morning America, Fox Sports analyst for the NFL, host of the $100,000 Pyramid. You've got Smack Management, right? Clothesline, and now MSX by Michael Strahan for the NFL. All of that came after he said that was enough. Was there a moment when you left football where you realized that this was everything now? Was there a pivotal moment where Michael Strahan, the football player, became Michael Strahan, the entrepreneur? And by the way, I say entrepreneur because while you might be working for Good Morning America, you've got a brand that's absolutely remarkable, right? Your personal brand is as powerful as any other brand out there. Was there a moment that happened in?
You know, well, first of all the stuff that I do now, I consider to be gravy because football was never supposed to happen for me and the career that I had there. So all this stuff now is like gravy on top of, the meatloaf. And I'm so grateful for it, but I never woke up and said, I'm going to create this brand. I'm going to be this brand. I literally woke up and said, what can I try next? What's out there? What are the opportunities? And the first opportunity was Fox NFL Sunday. And I'll never forget doing that show. And in the first 2 or 3 weeks, I literally thought to myself, this was a mistake. The Giants have offered to give me a contract to come back for another year. I should have taken it because this TV gig is hard. Got all these thoughts in my head, and then I got to watch Terry, Howie, Jimmy talk. And by the time they get to me, they said everything I was going to say, and I'm stuck. And it was not easy or in either the transition that people expect because I always have people say to me, oh, it was a seamless transition. And in my head, I'm like, it's so far from seamless. So far from seamless. And I thought I should go back and play football. I almost quit after week 3. But I'll never forget the moment that I realized I can do TV is I said I have 3 points. And we were doing Fox NFL Sunday, and I say point number 1. I say point number 2. Then I get to point number 3, and I forgot it. No idea what I was going to say. So what do? You're live TV. I start coughing like I was having a coughing fit. And Howie's patting me on the back, and then I go, and then someone else picked it up. And then when they were done, I was like, oh, yeah. And what I was going to say, because I remembered my 3rd point. And I said to myself, now that was pretty quick thinking on your feet. You can do this. And I never looked back after that. And I look back in between that and then when I went to do live, and when Regis left and that job opened up, and had I gone back to football, the timing of everything wouldn't have worked. I wouldn't be where I am right now. So that was a moment in the television game that made me realize that I can do it. And in the entrepreneurial side of the business, we've had the management company for some years. We had the production company for some years. One of the things I'm most proud of, though, is the clothing company, is our fashion line. When I say ours, myself and my partner, Constance Schwartz, is we had to really just create something. It wasn't a business for me that existed. And to sit in a meeting with Marvin Ellison at the time, who was co-CEO of JCPenney, and to sit in a meeting at the Peerless office and say, hey, this is an idea we have. This is what we want to do. And having to lead the meeting. Because one thing I feel when you're an athlete, and this is if there are any athletes who are going to watch this, or anybody in general who's known for doing one thing, but you're trying to get into another business, when you go into the room, know what your business is, know what you're talking about. Lead the meeting. Don't sit back and think my name is on it, my partner, they're going to do the talking, and I just have to sit here and be eye candy. That's not good enough, especially if you have a partner that really wants to know if you're invested in your business. So to sit in that meeting with Marvin and Peerless and really to be able to lay it out without needing Constance to say a word, to be able to answer the questions they were asking without Constance needing to say a word, was the moment that I said, this entrepreneurial thing, and to have them say yes, the entrepreneurial thing, I think that's when the bug really hit me that we're onto something here. This can really be a brand.
So two questions related to that. One is that, and I'm thinking back to my days when I used to be a fashion journalist actually at GQ and then Esquire, and you were a man about town then, right? But in thinking about it, you grew up in Texas, you grew up in Germany. You know, they both have a sense of their own style, right? Sandals and socks and cowboy boots or whatever it is. None of it that's particularly what I imagine when I think of Michael Strahan's style today. Where did that style come from, and how did that help you drive through the various clothing collections you've had?
Well, I think it came from just being all around the world and seeing different things and always traveling. The greatest gift that I feel like my parents gave me was just to see the world as a lot bigger place than just the community where you grew up and the high school you went to and the neighborhood you may have never left. So that was the biggest gift for me. And I think that those things, fashion is something that I've seen around the world. I think New York is a great way to shape your fashion. And I think that's where my ideas of fashion really have come from, is from being around the city and seeing so many diverse people expressing themselves in different ways and understanding that it's you, it's personal. And in the fashion business that we have, everything that is there is me. It's personal. I don't have anything that's sold or done that I don't wear myself, that I don't touch. I don't feel the fabric, that I'm not involved in, that I don't say I would rather have a zipper or a button on that instead of a button, or a button instead of the zipper. Move it on this pocket, move it on that. I'm so involved in everything because my name is on it, and I'm gonna wear it. It's organically me, and so. Yeah, fashion, I think it just shaped from being able to be yourself and being influenced by people that you know who are themselves in the way that they dress.
You say you touch everything, but you also acknowledge that you have partners and you have a lot of help. And for example, Constance Schwartz, a partner of yours. I think one of the things for entrepreneurs that is often really hard, especially when they're starting a business, founding a business, is finding the right partner, someone they can actually move forward with. How did that work for you? How did you come to know who you could work with?
Well, I met Constance 27 years ago now, because Constance worked at the NFL. She started out as an intern and secretary and worked her way up to where they were putting on all these special events and trying to fill all the airtime that the NFL had back in the day before they knew exactly how to put on the shows that we see today. So I met her when she worked at the NFL, and I did some events with them, and we just clicked. We hit it off, and she became like my sister. And Constance was at the NFL for 10 years, left, went out west to California, and every time I was in LA, I would go hang out and visit her and go by the office, because she was working for various companies out there, from a record label to a management firm, doing all of their strategic marketing for all of their clients. And right in the middle of, basically the economic downturn, she went on on her own, which she had gotten advice from people like you. This is the worst time to go on your own for business. But she had some really good friends who really helped her out as far as like office space and advice. And when I retired from football, I would go to the office, I'd sit around, I'd have ideas, I'd talk about different things to her that were going on. And it just made sense. Like, why am I not? She said to me, "You're always in here with your opinion. Why don't you just get involved?" I said, "In what way?" She goes, "Well, we can partner if you want to partner." And I absolutely, because I trust her. And I think it's very important to have a partner, which I have been very fortunate to find. First of all, who you trust. Secondly, who puts the long term over short term. Who understands the difference between a personal relationship and a business relationship, but who always, in every way, for Constance, as she taught me, it's never about the money. Because if you do what's right and you do what's organic and you do what is good, all that stuff comes with it. And it's all about the long term. So for me to find Constance as a partner was just an organic relationship that became 27 years ago, and now is as strong as ever. And she is literally my sister. I always say she's so much to handle that she had to marry a guy named Michael. So it's like, takes two Michaels to handle one Constance. But she's a fantastic partner, and I can't do what I do without her. I can't do what I do without our team, because we have a great team that helps us manage all the businesses that we manage, and also make sure that I can still do the things that I have to do every day on top of those responsibilities as well.
So tell me about that a little bit, about teams, right? You were the on-field leader of a team. Now you're the business leader of the team. What are the similarities and what are the differences? And what is, what's something that's going to be useful to me to work with my own team?
One thing I love about sports is all about team, especially in football when you have so many guys. And I've been on great teams with great players, but with the wrong attitudes. And I've been on teams where the players weren't as great, but the attitudes and the commitment were better than anything you've ever seen. And that was a team that we won the Super Bowls with. So one thing I learned about team is you have to empower people. You have to trust them. And Constance and I have our thing where we didn't give you a job, and we really don't have titles at our company, because when Constance was a secretary, would go to meetings and really have an opinion on something, and the boss brought her in because he knew she was smart, had an opinion, and someone at one point said, well, why are we sitting here listening to the secretary? And so at our company, we don't have that. We don't have someone feels like they're inferior. Everybody had the opportunity, if you have an idea, to present it and not feel as if you're going to be shamed because you have a title. We don't want someone walking into our office and looking at a title and thinking that person, they can't contribute or add anything, because that's not how we operate. We hire people and we empower them. We trust them. So if this is your job, and you understand what you need to do, we're going to trust you to do it. We're not going to micromanage. Because if you're going to micromanage, then why don't you do it yourself? So you have to trust your team. And I was a micromanager as a player when I first started. Sundays, during the week, I'm worried. Oh, is this guy studying enough? Is this guy paying attention in the meeting? Does this guy know what he's supposed to do? And later in my career, last years of my career, I was like, hey, I know I'm going to be prepared, and I'm always going to be at a certain level. Because it's very easy to be one of 11 players starting on the team, but to be the one that every week everybody comes to you and looks at you and expects a certain level, that's the tough part. So I'm going to make sure that I'm always at that level where they know they can count on me, and it's never going to dip low, and it's not going to be a seesaw. It's either going to be at a great level or it's going to be superior. And trust that they're going to do the same. And it was the best thing I did. Relieved a lot of stress off me, a lot of anxiety, and it made work enjoyable. It made me enjoy football, which I cannot say I always did. So I've learned that, and that's something we carry over to our business, and that's what makes our business enjoyable, that we trust people and we're not bogged down by the everyday minutia that you can let bog you down because you don't see the big picture.
So you must get energy from that, right? That gives you an energy almost to do as much as you do. But I also think, football exhausting, and you've talked about that in its way. Work exhausting. I don't think people actually appreciate how tiring it can be, or what a different kind of exhaustion being on camera all day long can be, and having to keep your energy level up, right? How do you do that? Because I think that's important now, especially for business leaders when they're talking through Zoom to everybody, to have that right energy level all the time. How do you manage when you're on set for hours and hours and hours?
Well, I'm not going to cry and say it is the hardest thing, because when you have a 350-pound guy who does not like you and wants to beat you up, that's a lot harder than sitting in front of a camera and talking to people. But to me, energy is important. You can feel energy in the room. You can feel energy over this Zoom. And people feed off energy. Have you ever walked into a room or had someone walk in the room and all of a sudden the room either gets happier or the room gets darker? That's energy. And for me, like shooting $100,000 pyramid, we shoot 23 episodes in 5 days. So you're out there, 26 actually this year in 5 days. So you're shooting 3 or 4 or 5 a day. But they don't air in that order. We don't know what order these shows are going to show up on your television screen. So if you watch a show that we filmed the last day or the middle of that run and I was tired, I don't want you to know that. I want you to watch any show that we film and you get the same energy that you're going to get on the show we shot on the first day when everybody's super excited. And I feel like I owe that to the audience, but I also owe that to the people who are the celebrities and the contestants who are there to do it. I owe that in Good Morning America. I don't know how I care how tired I am. When I get there, the audience expect a certain thing to wake up to. So for me, the energy that you give is also the energy you're going to get back. If you exude positivity and if you exude energy and focus, then you're going to get those things back. And we all, we have seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off probably when the teacher Bueller, that puts you to sleep. No one wants to hear that. We all want something to get us going, something that motivates us. And that kind of drives me to kind of pick people up. But at the same time, I'm taking energy from them as well. And it is tough. It is really, really tough. And there are times that I need to take a break and go take a 5-minute nap just to get my energy to where I need it to be. But everybody's different. I've had to figure myself out in that way. But if you're the leader, lead how you want to be led. Give the energy that you want to get back.
That's really terrific advice and sort of a lovely life philosophy. Beyond the 5-minute nap, real quick, what else do you do to recharge?
What else do I do to recharge? I take a little nap. I do nothing. I relax. I hang out with my kids. I just watch mindless TV. One of the best things to do is kind of shut your mind off. And then there are times that I don't take a nap or anything, but I just turn off everything, phones, TV, and just sit in silence, because I think that, sometimes being by yourself, people don't know how to be by themselves. People don't know how to sit with themselves and be quiet. And I've learned that for me, even if it's a few minutes, just sit by myself and be quiet really helps me recharge. And I think one thing that helps me get through day to day is that I always look at my schedule ahead of time. I look at my schedule the day before. I lay out what I'm going to wear the day before, because it's one less thing to think of when I wake up in the morning. And when I know what my schedule is in my own mind, I have figured out a way to balance my energy to know when I can give, when I can relax. And if I know I have to go all day, then I'll find a way to go all day. If I know that after a certain time I cut off, then in my head I can make it to that time. And I think that's important. Just knowing what's ahead really helps.
So preparation, just like when you were a player.
Oh yeah. As a player, it's all about preparation. It's all about hard work, preparation, and putting in the work to the point where you're not nervous. I stopped being nervous on game days for the most part. You have the butterflies, because I knew I was always prepared. When everyone would after practice would go take a shower and go eat, I would go to the weight room. I'd work out. I'd run extra. I'd lift extra. Always doing something a little bit more than the next guy. Because in my mind, when I realized the fourth quarter, when everyone else is tired and I'm tired too, but yet I know I got a little extra in the tank because I've demonstrated it during the week. I went in and ran extra when I felt like this. I lifted heavy weights when I thought I was tired. So I know it's in me. I just have to reach down and find it right now. And I know I've worked harder than the next guy. And one reason I work hard now too, and speaking of team, is there's no better example than that. And yeah, I was a 15-year veteran, but I would practice every day. I would run after the ball like I was 21 years old. I would take the hits and do everything I needed to do to be the best player I can be on a Sunday. So it wasn't, take it easy on me today. It was like, no, let's work, let's go. Because I knew by taking it easy during the week, it's not going to help me on Sunday. I wanted to lead by example to the guys that I had playing with me. And I think by doing that, it allowed me, like I said earlier, to take a step back and not worry about their preparation, because I know they saw how hard I was going. It was going to push them as well.
There's a great lesson there too. Given all you have to do, I want to be respectful of your time. So I just have a couple more questions. One fairly serious though, and that's in the last 8 months, right? We've all been significantly challenged by the pandemic, by racial issues, by social injustice. You chose to go to a television studio every day in the middle of the pandemic while other people weren't. That wasn't a challenge for you, I guess. But how do you feel you've been challenged in the last 8 months, and how have you found yourself able to overcome that challenge?
Well, I mean, it was a big challenge for me to go to the studio every day because when the pandemic first hit, everyone was scared. I was scared as anybody else. I didn't know if going to the studio and who you're around, if you're gonna get COVID, how easy it was to get, how hard it was. We didn't know anything. I was scared, but in the midst of that, I realized that Robin, with her some of the things she's gone through with her cancer, George, his wife, had COVID, and then George tested positive as well. That I was going to be the only one in studio, which was important to me because we have an audience, and as an audience, I felt it was if I were healthy enough, it was my responsibility to be there in a place that they were familiar with seeing. Me sitting at home with a backdrop with all three of us, it's not something very familiar to an audience that is as scared as I am. But I knew what I needed. I needed to see something familiar. That's what I would have loved to have seen. So that's what made me get up every morning and go to the studio and do GMA and sit at that desk and deliver the news because people I felt needed to see something that they were familiar with. And at the same time, after doing it for a while, it just I learned a lot about myself, about TV, about, having to be there and be like the main anchor at that desk. But I just hope it gave people a sense of calm. But believe me, it was trying. I was scared for a big part of it. And then on the other business front, it was tough as well. I mean, our businesses, just like everyone else, businesses have taken losses, but at the same time, we've had to pivot. In our production business, we've probably sold more shows in this pandemic than we have sold the year before. But there were shows that are, some of them are very fitting on the times in which we are in right now. When it comes, if it's from, the racial injustice to police, to, the pandemic. So we kind of pivoted. And then the clothing business, we pivoted as well because our online business started to take off. So we had to, put more resources there and focus more on that and kind of feed that because people were at home more. They didn't need suits and ties. And we pivoted with JCPenney now to Men's Warehouse. So now we're opening up just the opportunity for our brand to be exposed to more than one outlet. So for us, it's been a learning lesson, but it's been a good one because it's forced us to pivot and do things in ways. Me personally at work at GMA, and us, professionally with Smack, to do things in a way that could keep our business thriving and growing.
I have to say the stuff you've shared today has sort of been remarkably inspirational. And as a lifelong New York Giant fan, I didn't think it could get any better than beating the unbeaten Patriots in the Super Bowl. But talking to you today has been terrific and inspirational. And I just want to finish with one question. This is the Inc. Vision Conference, and one of the things we hope to do is allow founders and entrepreneurs and small business owners see a way forward. And I'm wondering what the last piece of advice you might have for those folks who are here watching you today to get through to continue to survive what we've been through and make it into the next year with the same level of enthusiasm and optimism and hope that you seem to evince all the time.
Well, I think sometimes I think in the time that we live in, there are probably a lot of people who are probably questioning, do I stick with this or do I not? Do I continue my business or do I not? And for them, I can't answer those questions, but I have found that trying to stick with what your gut feeling is really has been important to me in my business and what I've been able to do. And if you're trying to pivot and you think there's a chance for you to pivot, stick with it. And I think the greatest thing that I always go by with my dad was my dad never said if to me. He would never, if you go to Houston and if you get a football scholarship and if you make it to the NFL and if you go to Fox and if you do this. No, my dad always said when. So for him, it may not have, it was like when this happens, when that happens. And now I look at my life and I think I never expressed doubt on anything, because whenever I wanted something, I said when. And if you start using the word if to yourself, to your kids, to your employees, I think that kind of sets in some doubt that something may or may not happen. And so for me, it was always the question of when. If you really have a legitimate shot for your business to pivot, to expand, to get better, think in terms of when. Encourage people and say when this happened. Change your own phrases and the way in which you say things to include when. And I think your mindset changes with it to make sure that you are going to succeed. And it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but I've always used the word when, and everything I've wanted to accomplish, even though there have been some failures that I have learned from, as we all have, but they still led to where I wanted to go. So think about in terms of when, never if.
And on that note, thank you so much, Michael Strahan. It's been brilliant. Thank you for coming to the Inc. Vision Conference.
And I gotta say that, you speaking of beating the Patriots being the greatest thing, and I must admit it's great. It is fantastic.
Thank you for that as well.
And now it's funny because I have another company called Religion of Sports, and my partner in Religion of Sports is the one and only Tom Brady. So it's nothing better than sitting at a board meeting with Tom Brady and our other partner, Gautam Chopra, Deepak Chopra's son, Gautam. And those both, Gautam's the big Patriots fan, and Tom, all those Super Bowls. But I constantly remind him that no matter what, he may have more rings, but he doesn't have the one that matters. And that was their perfect season. That's mine.
Michael Strahan, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Scott.